Welcome to the Christian Business Concepts with your host, Harold Milby. Christian Business Concepts is dedicated to guiding companies and business owners in becoming effective, efficient, and successful through God's Word and godly principles. Now, here's your host, Harold Milby.
Wonderful job, Kelly, and welcome everyone to this week's Christian Business Concepts podcast. And I'm your host, Harold Milby, and each week I share biblical principles that will help you run and grow your business or your organization. And as you apply these biblical principles, you'll find true godly success, I believe. And please be sure to help us grow Christian Business Concepts by sharing this episode with 4 or 5 other people that you think it would help, and by also sharing this podcast on your Facebook page or your LinkedIn page. CBC is dedicated to helping over 1 million businesses and organizations and leaders. And so we need your help getting the word out. So please, if you would, reach out to several people and let them know about the podcast. Now, as we begin today, I want to make sure and give a great big shout out to the country of South Africa for downloading so many podcast episodes this week. We sure hope that this podcast is a blessing to you. And thanks to all of you for downloading each week and for helping us grow the CBC community. Okay, well, let's get started today. You know, years and years ago in my mid-20s, when I was just starting to get involved in management and leadership, I was really kind of having a hard time dealing with some people who were really difficult to work with. And even then, I was a pretty ferocious leader, or reader, I should say. I read a lot of things. I read a lot of books. And so I went to the bookstore to find an expert who maybe had written a book about this particular subject, And it didn't take long until I found what I was looking for. And the title of that book was How to Deal with Jerks in Your Life. And I thought, well, that's the perfect book. That's what I need right there. How to Deal with Jerks in your life. And the title had me hooked. So I bought the book. And it only took me a few pages of reading to find out that the book was really about dealing with myself, my, we'll say, jerk tendencies, and how dealing with these would help me to be able to handle the difficult people in my life. So it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. But today I want to give you some principles that I have not only learned, but I have practiced and implemented in my own leadership career. So let's get started. And first, we need to understand that dealing with difficult people can be a challenging aspect of leadership or just in your personal life. But as Christian business leaders, it's important to approach these kinds of situations with grace, with compassion, and a desire to find a resolution that really aligns with your faith values, right? Today, we're going to explore some of those strategies and techniques for handling difficult people in the workplace. James 3:13 through 16 says, Who is wise and understanding among you? By his good conduct, let him show his works in the meekness of wisdom. But if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast and be false to the truth. This is not the wisdom that comes down from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there will be disorder in every vile practice. And so it's important, as I said on the onset, how we approach these situations. And that passage just, lets us know that. So what are some negative actions of difficult people that a leader of an organization or business, or even you personally, may face from time to time? Well, a negative attitude. That's first, a negative attitude. A difficult person with a consistently negative attitude can really have a negative impact on your team morale and productivity. And you've got to address this behavior. The way to address it is by providing constructive feedback about their attitude. And you offer support, offer resources to help them get a better attitude, to improve their mindset, encourage them to focus on solutions rather than on problems. The one thing I do know about people who are inherently negative, they typically focus on the problems and not the solutions. Wade Boggs, a great baseball player, said a positive attitude causes a chain reaction of positive thoughts, positive events, and positive outcomes. It is a catalyst, and it sparks extraordinary results. I got to tell you, that is a great definition of attitude and what it can do. Another would be resistance to feedback. Some people may resist in receiving feedback and getting feedback. They become defensive. They dismiss constructive criticism totally. And you've got to handle this by approaching feedback with empathy and understanding. Focus on specific examples and tangible solutions for the improvement. You have to encourage really a growth mindset by emphasizing the importance of really just continuous learning and development. Another is going to be passive-aggressive behavior. We've all dealt with that. Passive-aggressive behavior, such as giving the silent treatment or making sarcastic remarks or avoiding responsibilities. Those things can be really frustrating, I know, and that passive-aggressive people can be some of the most frustrating people to deal with. And you really have to address this behavior directly. You have to acknowledge this passive aggressiveness. And then you've got to encourage open communication. Now, that's not easy. What I'm talking about here today to deal with people that are problematic in your life, it's not easy. When you're talking about directly addressing a passive aggressive person, that's not fun. I'm just going to tell you, it's not fun. But you've got to encourage that individual to express their concerns openly and address any underlying issues that's causing whatever may be causing this behavior, and it may be outside of the company. The next thing is micromanagement. Dealing with a person under you that is a micromanager, that can be challenging. They constantly scrutinize not just everybody else's work, they'll scrutinize your work. They'll give you more feedback than you need or that you asked for, and they'll undermine a person's autonomy. So you've got to address this behavior, but you do it by seeking clarification on what the expectations are. You encourage them to trust and collaborate with others, and you demonstrate that, right? So you've got to focus, help them to understand to focus on the solutions. Instead of dwelling on the negative behavior of the difficult person, you've got to focus on finding those solutions and moving forward. All right, another is aggressive behavior. A difficult person may exhibit very aggressive behavior. They may yell. They may use threats or intimidating language. Now, to handle this, you got to remain calm because they feed off of a person who gets right back at that same level. So you want to remain calm, you be composed, and then you clearly state that type of behavior is unacceptable. And you offer to continue the conversation once they've calmed down. Now, if this kind of behavior continues, sometimes you got to get HR involved. I've had to get security involved before to ensure that there's safety for everyone involved. You've got to set boundaries. It's always good to have those boundaries, and you establish those clear boundaries. When you do that, I think that's so important to maintaining a healthy work environment. I had a guy that didn't like the way something went, and he stormed out of the office. And when he got down to the downstairs, there was a lot of people out there, and he came through. And as he did, he just used a very vulgar terminology, and he said that to everybody. He just said everybody, and stormed out of the building. And we could have terminated his employment right then and there, but I thought there was more to it, and I thought he still had a lot to offer. So we had to deal with that. That was a very difficult time, but we did deal with it, and it never happened again. And he apologized, and so it was something we had to deal with. But aggressive behavior is something you have to be very careful of. Manipulative behavior, that's another one. Some difficult people may engage in like trying to be manipulative, and they spread rumors, they play mind games, they use guilt trips to get their way, and you've got to set, again, clear boundaries, and you don't give in to this type of tactic. You stay focused on the facts, maintain a very professional demeanor. You avoid being drawn into this manipulative game. You just don't do it. But that's another one. Another is a lack of accountability. Dealing with a difficult person who avoids taking responsibility for their actions, or they blame others for their mistakes, can be really challenging. And you've got to address this by holding them accountable for their actions, providing clear expectations for accountability, and you offer support and guidance to help them improve their accountability. But you have to encourage this culture in your business. People have to be accountable. There have been times when I've had to terminate somebody that refused to be accountable, and when that happens, it really kind of opens the eyes of other people. So don't be afraid if you have to terminate somebody because they're not being accountable and you've tried every way to help them. Another is disruptive behavior. Some difficult people may engage in disruptive behavior, such as conflicts. They spread negativity. They really kind of that person that creates a toxic work environment. You got to handle this by addressing the behavior directly. Again, you got to set those clear boundaries. You got to enforce the consequences. You can't tell somebody, if this happens again, this is what's going to happen, and then when it happens again, you don't do it. And then you've got to encourage open communication and teamwork also to help mitigate this impact of this disruptive behavior. Another is resistance to change. There's a lot of people who don't want to change. They get very aggressive about their communicating of that. And you've got to address this by providing the rationale for the change. Involving that individual in the decision-making process could also help. But again, you offer support, you give him some resources to help him to adapt to the changes, encourage having a growth mindset, and emphasize the benefits, and try to get them to embrace the change for them personally and the organization. Another is lack of teamwork. There are some difficult people that may they just don't want to work with a team. They hoard information, they refuse to collaborate, and then they undermine a team effort. They handle this, or you should handle this, I think, by again, you foster this culture of teamwork and collaboration within your organization. And then you clearly set these expectations for what the team is to accomplish. And then you address any instances, anytime there's this individualistic kind of behavior, you got to deal with it quickly. And then you encourage open communication and transparency. Andrew Carnegie said one time, he said, teamwork is the ability to work towards a common vision. The ability is to direct individual accomplishments toward organizational objectives. It is the fuel that allows common people to attain uncommon results. And that's what teamwork does. Another is, we just have a few more of these, disrespectful behavior. A lot of difficult people may be very disrespectful. They belittle others. They make derogatory remarks. They violate people's boundaries. You've got to address this directly again, and you set clear boundaries for what respectful communication and behavior is, and you confront that individual, and you tell them that what they were doing was disrespectful, and then you got to make sure that you enforce those consequences too. Encourage this culture of respect and professionalism within the organization by modeling that yourself. So that's important. And then toxic negativity. Some people are just negative. Just nasty negative. And you have to deal with that directly. And then the other one is ego. an ego-driven type of behavior. And some difficult individuals may exhibit this, they've just got a big inflated self-opinion. They're arrogant, they're self-centered, they have this sense of entitlement. And you've got to handle this by addressing that ego-driven behavior. You got to give them some feedback, and you let them know the impact of their behaviors on others, and then you encourage humility. So you do this again. You foster this in your entire organization. This humility and collaboration and servant leadership within your organization. So those are some of the things that you deal with out there. These are some of the things that pop up. And so, what are some other additional principles that you can utilize? Well, some of these we've mentioned, but in Psalms 37:8, it says, "Refrain from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not yourself; it tends only to evil." So what you need to do is stay calm. Always stay calm and composed when you're dealing with difficult people. Don't add fuel to the fire. Don't let yourself be pulled into this type of behavior. So stay calm, stay composed, avoid reacting on impulse, avoid responding with just your emotions, because that can just make it worse. So just take a deep breath, maintain your professional demeanor, and you approach the conversation with a level head. Next, another principle is understand the root cause. You've got to understand the root cause. Before you can address the behavior of a difficult person, it's important to understand the underlying reasons why they behave that way. Are they feeling overwhelmed? Are they stressed? Are they misunderstood? When you gain insight into the root cause of their behavior, then you can address, I think, more effectively what the issue is. Rick Warren said one time, he said, willpower can produce short-term change, but it creates constant internal stress because you haven't dealt with the root cause. So it's important to deal with the root cause. All right, next, maintain a positive attitude. As Christian business leaders, it's important to approach difficult people with that positive and empathetic attitude. You got to remember that everyone has their own struggles. They all have their own challenges, and it's important for us to approach them with that love and understanding. Philippians 2:14 says, do all things without grumbling or disputing. I think it's important that we maintain that positive attitude. Brian Tracy, great leader, has written several books. But Brian Tracy said, you cannot control what happens to you, but you can control your attitude towards what happens to you. And in that, you'll be mastering change rather than allowing it to master you. So that's important. And then next, you need to listen actively. And when I say listen, I mean really be focused. Pay attention. Let your body language show them that you are listening. That's one of the most important skills that you can have as a leader, but especially in dealing with difficult people. So take the time to listen to their concerns, their frustrations, grievances, without interrupting and without judging, because this will help you get a better understanding of what their perspective is, and that in turn will kind of like pave a way, if you will, for a more constructive conversation. So communicate clearly and assertively, and state your observations and concerns in a direct and respectful manner, but make sure you listen. Proverbs 18:13 says, whosoever answers before listening is both foolish and shameful. Winston Churchill went on to say, courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. So there's times when you just have to overcome your own desire to speak and just be quiet and listen. All right, the next is practice patience, because it will take patience. Dealing with difficult people requires patience. It requires understanding. It's important to remain calm and composed. We talked about that. But just, be patient, because it doesn't always happen the first time you address somebody. Sometimes you address these things 2 or 3 times. Now, again, if you have put consequences and you have involved consequences with your first discussion, then you got to make sure that you do what you said you were going to do, but you still practice patience. And then again, we've talked about this on several of them. You've got to set clear boundaries. Make sure you have clear boundaries. And then what you need to do is you need to seek common ground. In difficult situations, it's really helpful to find common ground with that other person. Look for areas of agreement. Look for areas of maybe even shared values. And you kind of use those as a foundation for building a resolution or finding a resolution that works for both of you. 1 Corinthians 9:22 through 24 says, "To the weak I became weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all people, that by all means I might save some. I do it all for the sake of the gospel, that I might share with them in its blessings." Seek common ground. Seek common ground. Find out what that is, and that'll give you a great foundation. Next, offer support. As Christian business leaders, it's important to offer support and guidance to difficult people because they're struggling, either personally or professionally. They've got challenges. So offer to listen, but then provide resources, provide referrals, show compassion and understanding. 1 Peter 3:9 says, "Do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult. On the contrary, repay evil with blessing, because to this you were called, so that you may inherit a blessing." So you don't have to do a tit for tat. What you need to do is you're the leader, so make sure that you offer support. Number 9 is practice forgiveness. Practice forgiveness. That's important. I know in business that's kind of a dirty word, but in reality it's not. Forgiveness is a core value of your Christianity. It's important to practice forgiveness in dealing with difficult people. So you don't want to hold grudges. You don't want to hold resentments. You want to approach every interaction with a spirit of forgiveness and grace. All right, and then the next is you seek guidance and support. In some cases, dealing with difficult people, you're going to have assistance, maybe a mediator, maybe a counselor. And don't ever hesitate to seek guidance from HR. That's important. If you have an HR department, sometimes you have to seek help from HR or a trusted mentor or a professional counselor who can help you navigate through this situation. The Bible says that there's safety in a multitude of counselors. So don't do it in a vacuum. Don't try to do it all on your own. Sometimes you need help. And then 11, lead by example. As Christian business leaders, it's important that we lead by example in how we handle people, how we handle difficult people, how we handle situations. And people around you need to see how you handle it. You demonstrate patience and compassion and grace in your interactions, and you'll inspire other people to do the same thing. That's just what leading by example does. And then next, which is very important, is pray. Pray for guidance. Remember, guidance and strength from God in dealing with difficult people is really where most of the time you get your answers. So pray for wisdom, pray for patience, pray for grace in handling these situations. And then you've got to trust in God to provide that strength and support that you need. And then lastly, you've got to document these interactions. In cases, when you have cases where the behavior of a difficult person really escalates or becomes more problematic, it's very important that you document these interactions and keep a record of any of these incidents, because this documentation can really give you evidence in case there's further serious action that need to be taken, or can help protect you and yourself and the organization from potential legal or HR issues. I have done this for years, and it has come back to protect the company, protect me personally. So it's really important that you document your interactions. Make sure that you have that and have it in a secured location. That's important. So let's look at this. Handling difficult people in the workplace or in your personal life is a challenging aspect for you as a leader, and it requires patience and empathy and effective communication. And by addressing these negative actions like aggressive behavior and passive-aggressive behavior, negative attitudes, resistance to feedback, and all of these things that we've shared, when you deal with it professionally, and deal with it with an assertiveness and an approach that uses grace and compassion, and a desire to find a resolution. Make sure that it when you desire that resolution, when you work on that resolution, make sure it aligns with your faith values. And if you do that, I believe that you as a business leader, you as a person personally, I believe you can navigate all these challenging interactions. And I believe that you can maintain a positive life and a positive work environment. I really do. Father, thank you today for all of these very special people who have downloaded this podcast today. Lord, help them to use today's principles for dealing with difficult people in their life. Lord, help them to also recognize at the same time, it's more about dealing with themselves than it is about dealing with others. Jesus, give them strength and courage and wisdom to know the difference and for accepting their part of these types of situations. Lord, I ask you to bless them, and Lord, help them find true godly success, Lord, in Jesus' name, amen. Well, thank you again for downloading this week's Christian Business Concepts podcast, and be sure again to share it with 4 or 5 others that you think it would help. Well, it looks like that we're out of time, and I just want you to remember this, as I always say, Jesus is Lord, and He wants you blessed.
Thank you for tuning into this week's Christian Business Concepts podcast. Go to christianbusinessconcepts.com for more information and resources. Be sure to check out other podcasts that will help you take your business and your personal life to a whole new level of success.